All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Mind Over Matter. This is episode 27. We brought on Jason. I thoroughly enjoyed my conversation with Jason. He's been popping in the Discord here and there ever since we recorded, and his conversations contribute a lot to how I run my life now. It's pretty great. Got a a new person within our community, so I'm very excited about that. Kev, you want to go into a little bit why we got him on?
Yeah, so Jason was my first boss when I got to a an operational army unit. So when he first met me, I was 19, 20 years old, just kind of figuring out life. But he was a super good boss to me, and we kind of reconnected recently. So we wanted to get him on the show and talk about like some leadership stuff because he had a soldier that was a big problem when he first got promoted, and Trevor was that problem when I first got promoted. They ended up a lot differently, but there was a lot of parallels we wanted to kind of get into though. So, Jason, thanks again for coming on, and let's get into it.
Enjoy the show.
Hell yeah. All right, I guess we're live then. So, welcome to the Mind Over Matter podcast. Today we have a very special guest. He's actually my first boss in the Army in an operational unit. It's Jason sitting right over here. So, Jason, if you want to just give a quick intro about your time in the Army and then go into kind of how you met me, and we'll kick this off.
Yeah, so I've been in the Army 13 years. I've spent most of my career either working in or with special operations. Um, I went to basic training in Fort Jackson, shared that wonderful experience. Went to AIT here in Virginia at Fort Eustis, which is now Joint Base Langley Eustis. Um, and then went to straight from AIT to the 160th Green Platoon. So, and that's spent what about 5 years there, and then you came, I think, because I was
Yeah,
there
because
for a couple years before I left.
I want to say, yeah, you had just got promoted to E5 like right before I got there, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Because that's there was one soldier. We'll name because he's not in the Army no more. We could drop his name. So with the about the other dude, there was this
All right.
soldier. It was basically me, a dude named Kyle, and a dude named Matthew, right? And Kyle was kind of a I say kind of a turd. He was a turd, man.
And you guys were my first three soldiers that I got, like brand new soldiers I got to the shop when I first made E5.
Yeah.
Matthew wasn't the greatest soldier either.
No, at the time, bro, Matt wasn't even that bad. Like Matt wasn't bad until after really his like first deployment. Then he
uh,
got kind of late. Like, but he actually taught me a lot of shit. Like I didn't learn anything or know anything before I got there, right? But you
Yeah.
know, Matt taught me a lot of shit. But Kyle, dude, he was a problem child, man. So
He
my question,
was
yeah, pop off, dude.
So he was my first Article 15, my first ever, I would say, problem child that I ever had to deal with in the Army. He was that very first NCO experience that I ever got. And it was hard. It was hard to navigate that for sure.
Were you like, how much support did you have from the bosses at the shop with that?
I had a lot of support from John, which was like, the step above what I was dealing with. As far as like anything above that, I mean, the commander and the first sergeant at that time, I had their ear and they respected me a lot. So anything that I, recommended to them as one of the NCOs, they kind of trusted me on it. So I had a lot of support from them, but it was weird for me because that was the first ever incident that I had ever dealt with. And I had an Article 15 when I first arrived there in the shop. So I kind of had a weird way of navigating it is like I didn't want to punish him too drastically for it, but I also wanted him to know that hey, this is going to be wrong and we're not going to tolerate it. You know what I'm saying?
Are you comfortable sharing what your Article 15 was for?
Yeah, it was lying to a non-commissioned officer.
oh,
What?
So
bro,
What?
I ain't
yeah,
never heard that before. Come on,
yeah.
I could count. I couldn't count how many times I lied to Kevin. Shit.
Countless, dude. What did you
I
lie
mean,
about though? Like for real?
so yeah, so I had gone to a fair, like a fair in Kentucky, the night prior with some friends, and I showed up late. And it wasn't the first time I was late. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
I was not great those first couple years in the Army. I had my growing pains. But I was late coming into work the next day, and I mean, like almost as bad as Kyle, but not quite as bad, sort of deal. So I show up, and I still had the fare stamp on my hand, and
Oh,
the NCOIC of the shop at the time, who leave nameless. He was kind of a hard ass, and he thought I was out drinking at a club, and I was underage at the time. So I told him no, I wasn't, but I wouldn't tell him what I was doing. Like, I've always been of the opinion you leave out details for a reason, and
hell
so
yeah.
he thought I was lying about drinking that night, and that's what he charged me for. So
Charged me.
And so what then? You just took it because you didn't want to tell him like what you were actually doing?
yeah, pretty much.
ate that
So
shit.
I've always been like, my life is my life. I've separated the Army professional and personal, and I had to do that in the beginning because of a lot of rules that were established then, and my lifestyle, I guess we'll say.
Yeah.
So, in the beginning, like I had to keep all that stuff real hush hush and low key, and it was a weird way to navigate it. So I've always kind of kept my life that way. Like I don't share a lot of details. People don't necessarily get to know me very well, but that's just who I am. So at that point, I felt like it was probably just best to leave that detail out. So
What was your punishment? Do you remember?
yeah. So you remember the gravel area out in front of the hangar?
Yeah.
Where the park,
So
like on the parking lot side?
They
so
put
it
the
had the
nice
rocks and the
trees.
tree,
Oh,
had
yeah, yeah, yeah.
had the
Okay.
flags outside, right?
Yeah.
So I painted all that. I painted all the walls, all the wood around it. They literally dropped a pile of rocks out because Soab hadn't been built yet, but the field was cleared over there. And so they dumped a pile of rocks over there, and I literally had to take a wheelbarrow with a shovel, fill it up, drag it over, level it out. I made that little rock garden out in front of the hangar.
That's about 100 yards to give you a picture,
Yeah.
one way about how far that is, I reckon.
Yeah. It wasn't tough, but it definitely, so I'll back up. I had gotten direction, right? At first, they were kind of pushing me hard, and they were like, hey, we're going to have an NCO watch you. Like, it's going to be these hours and this many days. And then we had a change of first sergeants, and First Sergeant Telesco came in at that point. And he was walking in the hangar one day and was like, what are you doing? And I was like, oh, I'm on extra duty, First Sergeant, And he's like, how long? And, I started explaining it to him, and he's like, we're going to change that. So he literally went down in the shop and told my NCOs, like, no NCO is going to waste their time watching him. He's a grown ass adult. If he's not going to do it right, we'll just keep him on it. And we're going to give him one project. And however long it takes him, that's how long this punishment's going to last. So
That's a
it
lot
honestly
better.
wasn't that rough.
Yeah.
It was a lot
respect
better than
that.
it could have
Yeah.
been. Yeah.
Yeah, because the only Article 15s I ever had to like babysit, so to speak, it was like 4 dudes got it all at one time.
Yeah.
So they couldn't like be like, oh yeah, y'all are good to just go on about it, But do you
The
remember
other
what?
one,
Go ahead.
the only other one I had to do was we had one. It was a DUI, I believe, and then some suicidal ideations came about. So I had to sit there and watch them. But
Yeah, our
that
DUI
was
dude.
about it.
We're not gonna name drop him, but my boss, I guess, jokingly told me, we in the shop we had those yellow lines, like on the where the walk paths were.
Yep.
He was overseas and he texted me, have him paint those yellow again. And this dude did such a phenomenal. You actually helped him, didn't you, Trevor?
Oh yeah, bro. It was like 3 p.m. on a Friday is when he like Kevin got the text to start doing this shit, and then he came back, fucking started like taping up the lines. I was like, and I had no idea. I just got done working, cleaning everything. I'm like, what the fuck's going on right now? And the dude got on
Yeah.
his knees and started painting the fucking lines. And I'm like, dude, I understand what this guy did was wrong. But he's literally on his knees right now. It's Friday and he's painting these fucking lines yellow again. Like we already did this shit. So I just got on my knees and we got that shit. Dude, we got that shit done in like an hour, maybe 30 minutes. We got that shit done like that. And then right after he gets home from deployment, Kev, I'll let you finish the story. But
Yeah, he gets home from deployment, right? and they did a phenomenal job on this floor. Like that floor is very walked on, you know, like we drive forklifts in there. That shit was chewed up, right? But it looked
Well
brand
used.
new.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah, well used, right? And the boss gets home and he looks at it and he's like, "Damn, this looked great. What happened?" I was like, "What the fuck do you mean? What happened? You told me to have him paint this shit." He's like, "You actually did. I was kidding." I'm like, "What the fuck are you talking about, bro?" But we were taking so many L's, dude. Like that, a dude got hacked and all of his money got taken. Fucking Trevor's being him, you know, running into trash cans, getting speeding tickets. It's like and I've been an NCO at that point for like 30 minutes, barely.
Yeah. And you're just thrown into it. That's the
Yeah.
part about like, so I've worked with a lot of different you know, units in the Army, right? And I've seen infantry, I've seen aviation, I've seen engineers. Like I've worked with all of them, and I will say some of the worst NCOs, some of the worst leaders I have seen have been aviation NCOs, and
kidding.
it's because of like the way you're brought up. I mean, think about the situation you were thrown into, right? How well had we like fostered an environment for you to learn how to do that right?
Barely, because it was all about job proficiency, not like NCO shit.
Exactly. And you're thrown into it. You're thrown into it.
Dude, what do you mean? We got basic. What is it? BLC.
BLC, yeah.
Is that? Yeah, that's good enough.
Exactly.
Is that a leadership course though? I mean, in all reality, because most infantry units, they don't even, that's not really even considered a leadership course in their eyes. Like they view a ranger school or sapper school as a leadership course.
I only learned about NCOERs and BLC. Fun little factoid: you cannot use an umbrella unless you're in ASUs with a trench coat. I learned that shit.
I didn't even know that. See, you learn something new every day.
Fun fact, yeah. Now I'll tell that story real quick. Yeah, it was like piss and rain after PT, dude, and I kept my clothes in my car, so I would just bring my clothes into the barracks to shower and bring them back, right? And I'm like, I get my clothes, I got my umbrella. I hear, "Excuse me, sir." I'm like, "Oh Jesus Christ!" And I look up and I'm pretty sure it's the branch chief, like some E8. And he's like, "What's the regulation on wearing an umbrella?" I'm like, "What?" I'm like, "I have no idea, Sergeant." But I said, I'm guessing I'm wrong, seeing as you're yelling at me. He's like, "Find out and get back to me." Oh my God. But I guess I got off pretty light with that thing, all things considered, bro.
Yeah.
I didn't learn shit from BLC.
And did he say
was online?
What?
Really?
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
I was during COVID. But what were you gonna say?
We've had a lot of. Did he actually say wearing? What is the regulation for wearing an umbrella?
That is the exact nomenclature he used.
That's
wearing an umbrella.
I'm holding it. What are you talking about?
Like literally
using an umbrella. Like
this was like a black and white umbrella. It was like black and white every other team. It wasn't like I had one that had like a fucking the F word on it or some shit. You know?
Yeah.
It wasn't like vulgar.
I'll say this: like none of my views are the viewpoints of the Army, but they have some really dumb rules, like about a lot of different things.
Yeah, you got to have that trench coat on.
Bro,
yeah, and you can't put your hands in your pockets for longer than 2 seconds unless you're retrieving something. It's like my hands are cold. Why wouldn't I put them in my pockets?
Shout out to the 160th though. Bro.
Why'd y'all give me?
If they got one thing right. Yeah,
exactly.
Why'd y'all give me pockets?
No, yeah, bringing it back though. Yeah, no, that was the big thing though. Is it seemed we were so fixated on job performance, right? And it's like, well, okay, I can do my job just fine, but it's the NCO shit. Like, I honestly I felt underprepared because the 2 E6s that could have helped me were both overseas at the same time, and the only other guy there was the platoon sergeant, so he was a 7. We won't name him here, but we know what we're talking about. A notorious kind of hard ass, you know. And he would just, it felt like he expected me to have been an NCO for like 5 or 6 years at that point.
Yeah, and we put that onus on the brand new NCO. Like in that situation, you know, me being me now, right? Because I made a lot of mistakes, but I would have been that senior NCO that would have come down to you and been like, "Hey, have you ever done this before?" Like even if I had never done it, right? Even if I had never charged anybody with UCMJ or had an Article 15 situation. Like, okay, you and I, we're going to meet in the office and we're going to figure this out together. Because at that point, I'm teaching you and we're both learning together.
And the fucked up part was, too, is that I think of all the platoon sergeants there, every other one would have done that.
Yeah.
I know John would have done that. Frank absolutely would have done. He did do that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
Frank
it was
was
just
great.
it's just this one guy, man. It was like it felt like he was setting me up to fail,
Yeah,
And
Yeah.
and now
And
that I think about it all, like I never really was taught how to lead. I never made it to a leadership role, but I was like I went through basic or yeah BLC, and then I would have without COVID I would have ended up moving up, but COVID ended up doing all that bullshit. But the only real way I learned how to lead was just observing. No one ever like taught me how to do anything. I had to watch leaders suck or leaders do good. I had to see what I liked in order to know how to lead or even talk to a kid.
yeah, Kevin and I were talking yesterday, like some of the most influential leadership I've had has been bad leadership because
Easy.
you learn what you don't want to see in yourself, and you always change yourself to not be like that person. It's almost like you're getting nipped at both ends from it, because you don't want to be like that, so you push yourself even harder. And we put a lot of onus back on that NCO to like kind of either make it or break it, when in all reality, my perspective on it, having been in the Army for 13 years, is the Army, you're not going to wake up one day and be a leader. And I don't think everybody can inherently be a leader. I think that there's leaders and there's managers. And the Army does a real bad job of kind of breaking that up and knowing that not everybody can be a good leader, you know? Not everybody manages people well. How do we fit that in? Well, we put them into different positions where they can manage aircraft or manage property or something other than people, and they usually do really well with that. You know, you take that human aspect of it, they can actually manage and they can lead themselves, but as soon as you give them somebody to like basically take care of, um, it kind of goes a little wonky for them.
yeah, I mean, there are a lot. Like I can think of a few guys off the top of my head where they weren't great on engines. They really couldn't manage the shop that well, but they were great at admin stuff. Like
Yeah,
ask them to put together like a packet on anything, they could just nail it out the park. Counselings are just bulletproof, right? And like they were struggling in the shop, but then they were able to find jobs where they could like mostly do admin shit somewhere else, and they both excelled at it.
yeah.
But
I mean,
Toss, go ahead.
we had one of my good friends who will remain nameless, an NCO there in the shop, and I'm sure you guys can, once I tell the
I
story, like
Yeah.
he was just not great at leading people. He couldn't manage his own time really well enough to be able to manage other people, and so it finally got to the point where they're like, "Hey, we're going to put you in ops." That was
Mm.
probably the best thing they could have done for his career because he went there and flourished. Like he flourished for whatever reason. That was his job, and he liked doing it. He liked doing it, and he was good at it.
It's funny how much I learned from him. It's like I wouldn't even know if I call it learning. I just pretty much did the opposite of whatever he would do.
Yeah,
I,
yeah,
but I'll tell you though, like one thing I was grossly unprepared for when I did get promoted, I was like, I'm thinking, okay, I'm an NCO now, like big Sarge, like that was the main goal. People like I
Oh,
got some rank to me, yeah, some authority, bro. Like it feels cool, bro. I'm not gonna lie, it's cool. It's a good feeling because you earn
yeah.
it. So, but I was so unprepared though, was just getting shat on from both ends.
yeah.
Like when you're an E4, you got to worry about yourself. That's pretty much it, right? But when you're an E5, it's like you're getting an earful from the boss because Trevor's boots are dirty or some stupid shit, right?
Yep.
Or med pros are red, whatever. It's always nonsense, right? And then the E4s and below are all bitching about having to do all that shit. Or
Yep.
I mean, I was E4 once. I'd bitch too. It'd be literally anything at all. You'd bitch about it. But I
Yep.
was just like, man, this is tough, bro.
And that's one of the things that, like, I don't think senior leaders impress on their younger guys is, hey, I hate this just as much as you do. Like, who likes who likes going in and doing anything in med pros? Nobody. Like,
No.
but you got to get it done. Why? Because the Army says so. Like, just tell you guys that, and I guarantee you, you're gonna have, okay, you're right. Like
Yeah.
they're gonna have an aha moment, like, all right, he hates doing this just as much as I do.
Yeah, or even
So
like
let's just get it done.
yeah, like Kevin comes up to me and is like, dude, like I could visibly see Kevin's upset or like just fucking tired from a week's worth of bullshit. And like Amundsen comes in, says one more thing to him, and he's like, you know what? That's it. Then
Yeah.
it clicks in my head. I'm like, all right, maybe I should help Kevin out and just fucking do what I'm told.
It was funny, bro. One time, bro, I was just having a bad day, and we had two soldiers in BLC, right? One of them, it was like the day before they were supposed to graduate. One calls me up, and he's all like, "Hey, bro, they're kicking me out. They said I fucking failed tape in the beginning. I wasn't supposed to pass or whatever, so they're kicking me out." And I'm like, I should just go up to the top of the mezzanine and just nosedive off this because I know,
Which I know you guys probably have a lot of veteran people on here. For people that don't know, that's a big deal. Like height and
oh
weight in the Army for many, many years has been a huge sticking point. So
yeah. Like when I went to BLC, yeah, I was 2 pounds over and they taped me, man. Like they're sticklers about it, you know.
yeah.
But it was like he was almost done, and he's like, "Yeah, they're kicking me out because they said I shouldn't have been here in the first place." And I'm like, "Oh my god, bro! I'm just gonna jump off the like mezzanine. Like Amundsen's gonna kill me." And then he said he was joking. I'm like, "Bro, this fucking clown, bro." I was
Gotcha.
so fucking pissed off at this guy.
Immediate blood pressure spike. Yeah, I
Yeah,
know the feeling.
literally,
Yeah.
Great stuff.
Yeah, no, it was. I don't know. It was just kind of tough. It was like that's why I like the platoon, like Frank. You know, I think that was like an S tier platoon sergeant. Like him and John, I think they both excelled in different ways, but
Mm.
Frank, I think, really did a good job of like instilling kind of like the greater picture and like the why in me.
Well, and while we're on the topic of Frank, like I just went through SLC with him. He's one of
Oh,
those leaders
what?
that,
That's
yeah,
awesome.
he's one of those leaders that is great at knowing his own deficiencies. You
Yes,
know,
Very
yes,
humble.
like he knows that he's not great at everything, and he knows that he's gonna fall short, right? And a lot of leaders don't go into leading in that sort of frame of thought. You're not going to win every single thing. You're going to have failures, and you learn from those failures. But as a leader, you have to walk in with that inherent, like, okay, like you never plan for contingencies, like something's going to happen sort of scenario. You know what I mean? And you're going to fall short. And Frank's really good at being like, hey, I know where I sit on this, and he gathers resources. He gets people to come in and help him.
he was open about it too. That's what I really liked. Like, I
Yeah.
know you're supposed to be like a shield for us, you know, but like eventually we're probably gonna have to deal with the same shit if we stay here long enough. So like, it'd be nice to know what to expect. Um,
Well, and whether we openly express it or not, this is what kind of irritates me about the Army a little bit too, in a way, is senior leaders aren't allowed to have that personable moment with their soldiers. You can't complain about stuff when in all reality, like those soldiers they're seeing it. They're like kids. They're seeing that stuff that you're going through. You just said it, Trevor. Like you could look at Kevin and totally pick up on when he was upset. You knew that. You knew what was triggering him. You knew what was making him uncomfortable. So
Yeah,
they're going to
it's
see it, and us not having the ability to like express that and have that human personal relationship it's drastic. I
it's
still do
it's,
it, and
it's
I get yelled at all the time.
it's that scene from Saving Private Ryan when they're walking in the fields and they finally ask Tom Hanks what he thinks about the leader and everything that's going on. And he's like,
Yeah.
"I will not bitch down."
Yeah.
But that I was just thinking that was my next question I was going to ask you, and especially because so a lot of people don't know what Kevin is to me. Jason is to Kevin. So first leader, first really glimpse of what he should be, I guess. And so when I was going through a tough time and Kevin was my leader, it took that personable moment to save my life almost. Like Kevin had to come to me and say, "Look, like let's change something about you," or Kevin came to me and we started talking on a personal level about how to fix my life. Not there's no army involved, nothing like that. When do you think that personal moment should happen? Like, is it a threat of the soldier's life? Like, when do you think it's almost okay to just say, "Look, we're all human"?
No, I think that should happen in the very beginning. Like, obviously there's that respect that you initially give to your seniors, right? You have to. It's just that rank. You respect the rank initially, but you have to have that personal moment. Like, we're human beings at the end of the day, and I've kind of like grown accustomed to just make people adapt like this is like you should get to know each other. You should have that personal moment. You should know because one, as a leader, you're getting to know your soldier, right? So you're going to kind of know like, oh man, he seems a little off today. Like, or not even that, like job performance wise, like how can I help him be more productive? How can I be a better leader for him? And if you don't have those personal moments, it's like you're both battling each other at that point.
Yeah, it takes some like self-reflection, I think. Just even to start out being like, okay, where am I like lacking in as a leader,
Yeah. And I look back on moments that I've had over the last 13 years and even before that, because I was in the Scouts and an Eagle Scout, and I had a lot of those situations before I even joined the Army. But you kind of, you're going to fall, you're going to fail. And I've had some of the best learning moments, like teaching points for myself personally in the failures that I've had.
A
I
failure, like leadership failure.
yeah, yeah, leadership failure.
Can you tell us
Like,
about it?
so the situation with Kevin, that
Okay, okay.
I count that as a failure, right?
Oh.
Because I think I think Kevin could have been a prosperous soldier in the army. Like I think he could have been a good soldier, and I think he could have done 20 years and had a career out of the army. I think he was more than capable of doing that. I just didn't know how as a leader to get that personable moment to him, right? I think I kind of did it with you. I think I kind of did it with like Ortney and the other guys that were in the shop at that point. But for him, I just had a really hard time getting like to his level to have that personal moment. I would try to, have cordial conversations with him, even when he was in trouble. And we're not talking like little stuff, like, being late for the third time that week sort of deal. And so
I
you
wasn't
kind
late
of,
though. I wasn't late though.
no, I'm not saying you.
Yeah.
I'm saying Kyle.
Oh,
Like,
okay, okay.
yeah, I could never have that. Like, I could never bridge that gap with him. Like, I couldn't breach the door with him on figuring out how to have that personable moment because I think he was a little immature at the time and he couldn't separate that stuff. Like to him, this was all one thing. And whereas me, like personal and professional have always been sort of split two roads.
Yeah.
So
So that's kind of what it was for me is I was combined. Yeah, I was immature at the same time and I combined my whole life together. And that personable moment is when I realized, look, this shit isn't all the same, like Kevin finally I got invited over to Kevin's house. We hung out for a little. I understood life a little more and now I realize, look, this shit isn't all that serious. I'm not here all day. This isn't my life right now. And
yeah.
it just took one of those moments to really realize it. But like you said, I was just as immature. Like it was almost impossible for anyone to get something through my head just because I was joking around or just acting up, doing something stupid. So
You had a mouth on you too, bro.
yeah, bro. It was impossible for anyone to get something into my head. So finally, just yeah, I don't know.
So I'll ask because I'm always learning, right? What was it that you guys finally bridged that gap with? Because it seems like there was a good portion of time that you guys didn't really get along too well.
Yeah.
And if you've talked about this, like just give me the synopsis. So
You want to do it, Trevor? Or you want me to do it?
Go
I can
ahead,
do it if you
Kev.
want
I
to.
want you to see. Yeah, let it. Yeah.
Okay. So, Trevor, I don't know if you knew this, but like, I was the one who found out his wife was cheating on him when he was deployed. Like, he hit me up one Sunday morning at like 6 o'clock. It's like, go make sure there's no cars in the driveway, right? So I go over there with my wife. Of course, there's a car in the driveway. I take a picture,
And I thought
all
he was
this.
lying. Like he called me, said there's a car in the driveway, and I thought Kevin, the dude that's been there with me since I got into the army, was lying straight to my face. So
I'm
just
like,
just to
this
throw
seems
that
like
in there.
a ridiculous thing to lie about. Yeah.
Yeah.
But like, I'm no shit, dude. Me and my wife stopped in the middle of the road and took a picture of this car. And I sent it to him. And Like there was no lights on in the house, like they were obviously sleeping. It was Sunday, like 6:30 in the morning, and like I go and I park my car in this school next to the house, and then I go like drive away like 5 minutes later. I drive past Trevor's place, and the car is gone. Dude fucking booked it. And Trevor's like talking to his wife on the phone. He's calling me, right? And I don't know. It was just fucking. That was probably one of the hardest moments I had in the army, just because I felt so helpless about the whole thing. And I'm like the bearer of bad news. I can't do shit to help this guy. It's not like I can go fucking beat her ass. Um, yeah, no, they ended up. Yeah, go ahead.
So really, it was in all reality, if we break it down to what it actually was, it was a stressful environment that brought you all together.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
100%.
that was the first time. Yeah, I think we really like connected. Because I don't think you called me for any other reason than you knew I was up, right?
Yeah, no, I knew like Kevin was like an acquaintance, not necessarily a friend yet. Like he was just my leader. I knew I could talk to him just about anything, but only like and I wouldn't bother him unless I had to. I knew Kevin. I respected his personal time. Like if he was home, I didn't text him, all that shit. But yeah, it was a Sunday, and this is when Kevin was huge into running. He was running like 25 miles a week. It was ridiculous.
More than that.
And the place he was running at, the Greenway, was right down my house, right down the road. So I thought of a couple things, but I knew my other friends are going to be asleep. I wasn't near my family. Like I literally had no one else to call. If I didn't call Kevin, I would have never found this shit out. So I had to call him.
Yeah. Did she like spend a lot of money on like drinks?
So the night before I woke up and it was like a $250 tab at a Star Spangled at a brewery. And I was like, what the fuck? So yeah,
there's something going on there.
Yeah.
For sure.
I'm not gonna say that I was excited, obviously, but like we all kind of figured just by like her demeanor, what she would wear. Like the first time I went over to y'all's house, it was like 5 or 6 of us there, and she had these shorts on, dude. They were like couldn't have been longer than this pouch packet right here, like super short. Like my wife, when we left, she's like, oh, we got to block her on everything, like just bad news, So I'm like, all right, let's get this bitch right. So yeah, no, I found her, and then you were big talking to Angulo about that whole thing, right, Trev?
Yeah, so I was lucky enough to be overseas with an older dude. I don't even know what his age was, but he's around like 35, older E6, and he was like my dad over there, so I was able to open up about everything with him. And because I was trying to do it with my mother, but that wasn't really working because it was over the phone. Trying to do it with my family, I had no one to connect to, so finally I found someone to connect to over there. And then yeah, really when I got home, it was just a mess. That was my second deployment, so I already didn't deal with deployment issues from my first deployment. So I was already just messed up in the head at 19, 20 years old, coming home from a deployment. And then it was a couple short months later, my plan was to do 20 in the Army. So a couple short months later, I found out I had scoliosis, so that I'm getting med boarded out. And then I just, like I was saying, I could see it in Kevin. Kevin just saw like I was just beat the hell up.
Yeah, this dude was beat the hell up because like he knew he was getting med boarded, but there was even months after this whole thing where like we didn't know what was happening with him. Like I would hit up Frank like every day, like, do we have anything on this guy? But he just told me no. So Trevor was just floating pretty much for a while. And he had this car. I think it was a Volkswagen, right?
Yeah.
And it had issues with the clutch or the transmission or some shit, right? So I follow him down to this repair shop, and I'm about to give him a ride back. And I'm like, Trevor, dude, I got this. We'll call it a cigarette. I said, okay. I got this cigarette. No, I didn't say. I said, I got something that might help you, bro. And
yeah,
if you don't,
what you said verbatim was, now Trevor, I got something for you. I got a suggestion. If you don't like it, I'm gonna throw you a rock. If you don't like it, just toss it right on back.
Forget I said anything.
Yeah. I was like, all right.
Yeah. So he was super with it. Yeah. I'm like, cause that was the first dude that I was ever like comfortable extending that kind of hand to,
Sure.
And I could just tell that he needed some. So brought him back to my place. We smoked that cigarette, and it was all pretty well then,
Yeah.
And I don't think we ever established like we got to keep work and personal separate, I think that was kind of like just an unspoken rule,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
Well, whether Trevor knew it at that point or not, he had seen it from you. You know,
Right.
he had learned that whether he adopted that prior to or not. You know.
Yeah, no, but like no shit, dude. Like when you came back, Trev, you were drinking a lot, dude, with the guys.
Yeah, yeah. No, I was bad. It was every day, and that's what I was telling you, Jason. Is I did BLC online, so I came back, and it was COVID still. So I was in on came back quarantined for 2 weeks in my house, and this was like I just kicked her out my house, so my friend just moved in.
Yeah.
I'm quarantined in my house with a friend who just came back, so he's quarantined too. So we're both drinking, and then I get into BLC, which is online. Just show up, just like this, in front of the camera for a couple hours a day, and then that's it. So, I mean, I was drinking like literally every day because I was online. Like, why the fuck would I?
Yeah.
So yeah,
What else are you gonna do? You know,
yeah, exactly.
and the army, like I wouldn't even say like all the army, but the 160th, I will say, does some of the worst like post deployment reintegration. You know, they just see it as, oh, they're over there less than 6 months, like they're just going to jump right back into it. Well, no, we still need to know how to cope with that stuff. Like I've just started here recently over the last, I'd say 5 or 6 years, started, really going to therapy and working through this stuff and figuring out ways, because I've already been in so long, I've already hardwired my brain to have those reactions, those instances, and now I'm starting to like cope with my first deployment, you know, whereas back then I never really had that chance, you know. So
What made you start thinking about it more? Were you just couldn't take like the little thing? Like for me, it was I was just getting upset over stupid shit, and that got under my skin enough to where I was like, okay, what's really going on in my mind?
yeah, no, for me, COVID was rough on everybody, and not in the way of like, oh, I'm sick. It's like, no, I'm stuck in my house and I haven't seen anybody because they're putting all these mandates, and like it was necessary, don't get me wrong, but it's just one of those things. You're taking people, and it was literally me and my husband. Like that was it. I was going into work very briefly, but still at that point I was seeing the same people, and it put me into this, like it changed me. It changed everybody, but it changed me in the fact that I was starting to look at things differently. I had all this free time to do the things that I love to do, my hobbies. And so then when I started like we started going back to work more, it was almost a different shift in where I was like, well, now I don't have the time to do the things that I love because I'm so inherently like dedicated to this job that maybe this isn't for me. Maybe I've got to figure something else out. And it put me in like this depressive state for a while. And here recently I've sought medical help, and it's helped out a lot. And now we're at the point where I'm taking medication now. But it's you just got to work at it. You can't just come home from a stressful environment like that and think that you're just going to just be able to go back to the way you were. Those stressful environments, like they rewire your brain to a point where that stuff's, my therapist calls it residue. Like that stuff stays in your brain. And when you have those triggering moments that make you bring it back, it's because you haven't worked on it. You've just left it sitting there, and it's stagnant, and it's like bad. So
Yeah, just rotting your brain away.
Yeah, it's
yeah,
like
so
you.
I just got to a point where I was like, enough is enough, and I gotta go seek help. And a lot of people, there's stigmas to that. Like
Yep.
you go into a therapist in the army and you tell them I'm depressed, that can open up a can of worms, and it can change a lot of things in your life.
Yeah, the only
So
reason I was so willing to do it is because I was getting med board and I was already done. So it's like, all
yeah,
right, well, the only thing that could really happen is the therapist finds out like really who I am, and then in a couple months I never talk to them again anyway. So let's at least figure some shit out. So that was really the only
yeah.
reason, because the stigmas were so bad.
Well, and people don't do it just with their mental health either. They do it with their physical health in the army. They go for so long without saying, "Oh, my knee has been hurting for the last, 4 years because of this bad jump that I had or whatever." You know, we say that, and it's a stigma. And we do it to ourselves. Like we put so much emphasis on, well, if they're broken, like we're just going to med board them. Well, that's not necessarily the case, you know. Special operations is trying to start to turn around to it where they're starting to figure out that, you know, people seeking help for this stuff isn't necessarily a career debilitating thing. You know, we can help them and find work for them to do. You know, we can take away that risk of suicide of just dropping them out of the army and, you know, kind of just letting them be. Uh, so I'm a
Yeah.
big advocate for it. Like, go out and seek help.
Yeah, I remember like when I was drinking real bad, right? I was like, should I go to ASAP? Like I thought about that.
Yeah,
And I'm like, man, if they take my TI stamp from that, you know, like that's just gonna be such a problem. What I tell you though, one good thing though that came out of Trevor's whole situation is that you told a lot of people about going to therapy and like seeking out
Oh
those
yeah,
resources, bro.
yeah,
Because we didn't even really know about a lot of them. We knew the chaplain, you know, but that's about it.
yeah.
yeah.
No, I started going, and the coolest thing was Frank. So Frank knew everything about me. He was the leader at the time, and he was like, "Fine, just stay home, figure your shit out." Because everybody knew my situation. I was not one of the people to separate my personal life from work.
No, hell no,
So
bro.
I came into
Sure.
work and I let everyone know what was going on, and especially because the guys that were involved with it all worked right here, like literally right fucking there. So I'm gonna tell everybody, let everybody know what's going on. And I was the happy-go-lucky guy all the time for the 3.5 years I was there. So they knew me as the guy walking around smiling. And when I was med boarding, I was staying home, figuring my shit out, going to therapy, all this. And one of the days I showed up in like a sweatshirt, sweatpants, Crocs, walked into Proper Rotor, and they're like, "What are you doing here?" It's like, "Oh, dude, I got therapy in like 15 minutes." They're like, "Yeah, you look like a dude that should be going to therapy." And now
Rocks.
everybody in there, like, I didn't give a shit. I was like, "Yeah, dude, I'm going to therapy. Like, fuck you guys, I don't care." So now everybody in Proper Rotor thinks, "Oh, he's just going to therapy. Who cares?" And then I go into the engine shop, and that's what I'm telling everybody too. So it was just everybody knew that it was okay. Like, look, I'm going this because of this. This is to the extent of my issues. So everybody knew that I was going, and now with this, everybody hopefully can see that it helped. So maybe they'll
No
go do it
Yeah.
for
bullshit though.
themselves.
Yeah. After you started going though, like at least 5 or 6 people came up to me and were telling me like they're gonna start doing the same thing. It was crazy.
Hey, and sometimes that's what it takes. You know, I'm a big advocate for it now. You know, I've always told my friends, like, you know, go talk to somebody. Like, I've always thrown that out there, but I've never really dug into it as deep as I have now, like myself personally. And so you have to tell people about that. You have to make that personable approach and tell people, yeah, I'm seeking help. And if you have these issues, like, this is what I'm going through, like, maybe you should, you know, it's helping me. Maybe you should go talk to somebody about it, you know?
Yeah, that was one big thing I was trying to get, like trying to like I guess teach people, but like teach myself at the same time was like signs that you might have an issue, but like you wouldn't necessarily associate it with a
Yeah.
problem, like like having short-term memory issues. You know, that could be a sign of PTSD. But if you don't know that, you wouldn't really associate the two.
Yeah,
No,
and the
you
biggest
wouldn't.
issue is everybody's got it that you're working with. Like, we all went overseas,
Everyone.
we all came back, and like you said, there's no reintegration into society again. It's just fucking get back to work. And on top of
And
that is before deploying. I know my first deployment, I was waiting that whole year, like, "Ooh, I'm gonna deploy. Let's fucking go!" And like, this is gonna be awesome. And then when we come back, we're like, "Dude, that was so awesome." But no one's like, "Yeah, well, in like 6 months, you're gonna be waking up at 2 a.m. for no reason. So just be ready for that." Like, no one tells you that type of shit.
yeah, and you only see the symptoms, right? You only see this stuff when guys come into work and they're angry or upset or, you know, jovial and smiling all the time or whatever symptom they're showing. You're only seeing that. So if you have those same symptoms, you're thinking, okay, this is normal. Like,
Yeah.
it's normal for me to just suddenly be angry. It's normal for me to, you know, have an emotional moment over nothing, you know,
Yep.
like over nothing. That's normal for me. And then you just think that it's something you're just going to have to deal with, when in all reality it's not. Like, there are some things that are hard grained in there that you probably have a little more trouble getting rid of, but those little things, like, you can change that. You
You
can
know,
get help with it.
the fucked up part too is that it's probably something that everyone deals with it, but like, because we don't talk about it, we think we're alone, you know?
Yeah. Well,
Like,
that's one thing I learned during COVID. A lot of the people that I worked with that were my really good friends, we would have barbecues over here. We would hang out, and we were always doing something. And then it got to a point where we were always hanging out and, everybody's not so jovial all the time. We started talking about stuff and we started realizing that everybody's just as unhappy as I am about every little thing, whether it's personal, professional, work, or otherwise. Like everybody's dealing with the same stuff. Like, man, okay, it's not just me. Like, all right, now we all need to figure out how we get out of this. We all need to whatever it takes, get us out of this slump that we're in. So
yeah, I think a lot of it too, it's like there's times in life, where you just have to kind of nut up and be vulnerable, I guess, with people. And it's weird too, because like I mean, I get anxiety over doing it with people, but like it's never been something bad, you know. Like I've never told anyone like, oh yeah, I have anger issues or like loud noises, fucking mess me up or whatever. And no one's ever been anything but like super supportive over that. And they
yeah,
usually tell me, oh yeah, I have this a similar issue, you know.
yeah.
Yep.
And then you start talking about it, and that's
Yeah.
honestly that's some of the best therapy you can have
I
is
was just
just
gonna say,
sitting there
yeah.
shooting the shit. You know, I've had situations that I've gone back and talked to people that I was overseas with, and they're like, we'll just be recalling stuff that happened. Shank, probably one of the most notable ones. We got mortared. I mean, it was one night. It looked like streamers racing across the sky, and in my head, I remember everything vividly. But then you start talking about it, and it's like, no, actually, like this happened, then this happened. You got that stuff all mixed around. You know what I mean? You start talking
Yeah.
about that stuff and processing it a little bit more because there's things in those stressful situations that you don't see. You know,
How old were you on your first deployment, Jason? Do you
uh,
recall?
uh, 19,
Okay, yeah. I think that's how
yeah,
old I was too,
19 or 20. I was way younger than I should have been going
yeah.
over,
Well,
in that capacity. So
according to CNN, that's still a child. So.
Bro,
yeah,
that it's crazy.
can't
I was yeah, the same thing,
can't legally
bro.
buy tobacco. So
Yeah, that was the fucked up part, bro. It's like I get back from deployment, and I'm like, I can't even have a drink right now. Like,
yeah,
this seems kind of fucked up.
you can drink
But
in Germany on the way over there, but not when you get back to the States.
Yeah.
yeah, at the Rob, yeah. When
Yeah.
I my
Right.
Yeah.
first my first deployment, dude, one dude that we work with told me the Rob was the hotel across the street from the airport, that nice
Well,
ass
it
one.
used it used to be though. That used to be it. So my first deployment, we went overseas. The Rob wasn't a thing. We stayed in that hotel.
Ah, fuck the Rob,
Was
bro. Let's
it
burn that bitch down.
was the Rob in like end of 2016?
Uh, yeah,
Because that's when this was. Yeah, I think he was
yeah.
just fucking with me. We were pretty good friends.
Uh,
I think it was
Yeah,
like 2013, 2014 when they shifted that, like they changed it. But yeah, we stayed in the hotel. It was a luxury life there for a while.
shit though. You know what? Like low key helped me during COVID though is like flying in DJ, right? Because a lot of the times we would go from DJ to somewhere else, and it was always at night. You know, it's three
Hmm.
hours over water one way, and it's like you're 100 feet over the water. Like if something happens, you're as good as gone. You know,
Yeah,
and that kind of forced me to get comfortable with the idea that like, okay, if I die, like it's completely out of my hands. You know, if it's my time, it's my time. You know,
yep.
and it's like it's hard to explain that to people that haven't had to reconcile that, I guess. But
Yeah.
are
it
you?
was
Especially that young. Like
oh yeah,
I mean, I was getting mortared on my first deployment at that age, and like you just kind of adapt to make it. All right, this is my new life, and this is my new normal, sort of deal. You know?
Yeah, and so for you it might be even worse, but for us, cause we were going over there when the action was slowing down. So like, if I was my first deployment, I mean, we got mortared. We were sending out mortars, all that shit, but it was like we talked down on it because it wasn't that big of a deal. like,
Yeah.
we're just sending out mortars. It's only like 2 miles out. Like, it's not that big of a deal. It's 2 miles away. But then, because you come home and
Well,
you got these people that go on these crazy trips, and they're like, "Ah, that's nothing, bro. I went and did this." So now you
yeah,
think it's no big deal.
exactly. And that's what I was going to say. You like the senior guys that have been there for a while, they talk about their deployments and they're like, oh, yeah, we had this happen and this happened and it was crazy. And,
Yeah.
there was one day where this happened. And then so you get over there and you're like, oh, man, two mortars? Like, that's no big deal compared to what these guys
Yeah.
had to deal with, When in all reality, it is still a big deal,
Yeah.
even those
Exactly.
small little things that happen are big deals. So,
Yeah, I remember on my first deployment, like nothing happened, right? Really with that. And then on my second one, we were coming back from this forward base, and we took a different route than the first battalion did. But first battalion ended up getting a pilot shot, and like they had to land and like replace him with the MTP and fly back. But we took a different route to get a fuel tank or some shit, right? And I'm
yeah.
like, bro, this is some real shit, man. Like that was the first time I'd ever heard of anyone taking fire, and getting shot, bro. I'm like, what the fuck are we doing here, man?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was just I'm like, that could have been us, bro. Chinook's a lot bigger than a Blackhawk. Like,
Yeah, I mean, I remember my first deployment. I think one of the things that stuck with me the worst was, one of the we had a Air Force weatherman or weather girl, and I think one of the dog handlers got shot and killed over there. And they immediately, I mean, you guys know how it is. I'm sure you've seen it. Like they immediately have a ceremony for him, and that was like humbling and scary and like so many mixed emotions all at the same time.
yeah,
So
because it's like on the one hand, like, yeah, you kind of have to like be sad and mourn or whatever, but like you still have a job to do, so you kind of just put that on the back burner.
yeah, and you get angry, you know.
Yeah, you get pissed off, bro.
Yeah.
Are you spiritual or religious at all, Jason?
Uh,
Oh, okay.
I mean, I believe in a higher power. I don't necessarily follow any strict guidelines as far as what that might be. Uh, I've seen and done a lot of things in my life to kind of constitute that belief in myself. Religion growing up was a big deal for me, and my father recently just got himself out of a cult situation. So
What?
Whoa,
religion, yeah,
whoa,
religion
what?
for me is kind of finicky. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
A cult?
yeah, he was, so he had cancer, and it was pretty serious. It wasn't quite terminal, but it was on the fence. He had a kidney, stomach, had to get part of his bowel retracted or resected, all that stuff. So it was a pretty serious deal. And at that time, I was driving back and forth from Campbell down there. I mean, I was taking leave and going down there and helping with their appointments because my stepmom also has MS. Well, during this time, death brings on weird things in people, and my dad and my stepmom really fell into religion really hard. I don't think religion's a bad thing. I think it's great. I think it brings people together. It harbors that sense of community, and uh, structurally, like the guidelines that it puts in place, they're good. They fell into it a little harder than they should have, and then fast forward a couple years, they move out to South Dakota. My husband and I get married. They want nothing to do with us. Um, so it's slowly evolved back into where we have a relationship, but it's taken a few years, and it's definitely changed over those few years. But that's kind of why I have that sense about religion is like I just don't really hold myself to any bounds, I guess, with it. I just try to be a good person. that's
I'm with
really
you
the
on that.
the end of it.
Yeah, I kind of became a lot more religious during COVID when I was stuck in Afghanistan. Like one dude, he was doing like a Bible study. Um, and I'm like, I guess I'll go. Like I didn't have anything else to do. Like the gyms were closed, right? And he was like talking and like going over this stuff, and I was like, well, this makes sense. Like this seems like some cool shit. And like that kind of made me more religious. And then when I got back and Trevor shit was popping off, I was like, man, this is. I knew it was something that could help him.
Yeah.
But I hated the people that would like try to compel you to believe a certain thing.
Yeah.
Like,
They impress it on you. They make it like it's either this or nothing, and it's like, oh, that's not the case. Like I can be
Yeah.
who I am and you can be who you are, and
Right.
we can have a relationship,
Yeah.
and there doesn't have to be anything. We can disagree on stuff,
Yeah,
you know?
Kevin did it really well. He did it very subtly. So he knew that I wasn't religious and like really at all already. And I don't know if he meant to do it or not, but it would be just like jokes. Like I'd come in the morning, say something happened, and it would just be like, "That's the good Lord watching," or some dumb shit. And after
I can see
enough
that.
jokes and enough
Yeah.
stupid shit, I was like, dude, he's onto something. It's like, hey, it's the good Lord's day, or we'd be going home early on the Friday. It's like, good Lord wants us home early, don't they? I'm like, dude, what are you
Yeah.
talking about? Are you like, what the hell's going on? And then just enough of that where I was finally convinced. When I ran into a situation, I was like, maybe the good Lord's watching.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you start bringing that into your own life,
Yeah,
you know?
exactly. That's all you need.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
was
He
trying to.
slipped he slipped you the Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
I mean,
Just
bro, I was trying to tread lightly, man, but it wasn't like a denominational thing. I wasn't just like I wasn't trying to push you to be like a Catholic or like an Orthodox
no.
Christian or anything. It was just like get you to kind of believe in God and maybe whatever happens, right?
Yeah.
But I just wanted to tread like extremely lightly. Like if I had said a joke like that and you're like, that's fucking weird, Kev, like stop doing that. I would have just
Yeah.
stopped completely, you know?
Yeah.
But like, I mean, I'm a pretty joking guy. Like, you know, it's pretty easy for me. And then
Yeah.
like
Oh, I know.
something,
I know your
yeah,
jokes.
yeah. Y'all know my jokes, bro. And then it'd be like something where you could, I guess, contribute it to a coincidence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, is that really a coincidence? I don't know. That seems pretty coincidental.
Has it helped you in your life? I mean,
Oh, easily, man. One thing I have noticed is that it makes me a lot more appreciative and just grateful for everything.
yeah,
Like
that's good.
before, like yeah, before like when I was growing up and I was a teenager, you know, up until I was like 22, really, I was like a devout atheist, let's say. Like I was anti-religious. Like I thought there's a, you know, I can't look up and see God in the sky. You know, none of this shit makes any sense. Like the Bible's all old and all this stuff, right? And then I got like older and some life experience, and I was like, you know, this seems like a lot of coincidental shit to just be kind of made up, right?
Yeah.
And then I'm thinking too, like if I'm not here for a reason, and this is all just coincidental, really my life doesn't mean anything. It
Yeah.
has no significance because there's nothing precious about it. Like I don't really have a soul. I'm just this semi-conscious bag of meat, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And as humans, we kind of need that. We need to know that there's something else afterwards. That's kind of
yeah,
like that reassurance, that self assurance that we get that this is not all just pointless. I mean, it's not when you think about it. Even if you take the religious aspect out of it, like what we do in our life is going to impact something somewhere. Right? Even the small stuff. So sorry, my dogs are barking, but
yeah,
even the small stuff, it has meaning to it. So
yeah. It helped me forgive a lot of shit too. There was like a lot of shit where I guess I could hate myself for what I did, or like what other people had done to me. But I'm a really like forgiving guy now. Like I don't think most people are malicious in their intentions. Like Trevor, let's
Yeah.
say, he was not a he was not mouthing off to me because he genuinely was a hateful individual who just wanted to see me suffer. Like he had grew up in a rough neighborhood. Yeah.
and it had nothing to do with you either, probably. That's just how
No,
he is. That's how he
it would have
talks to people,
it
you
would have
know?
been anyone in that situation. Like I could hear
Yeah.
him giving a lip full to any NCO in there, you know? And I'm like, this is not a hateful individual, but I would still come home a lot of the times and tell my wife, like, man, Trevor pissed me off so bad today. This is all the dumb shit he did, you know?
Yeah.
But
Well, I would do the same thing with Kyle. I mean, it was
Hmm.
yeah,
it was a struggle, yeah. I
'cause
mean, I
I could
talked
tell,
to really good friends back in that time, like, and vented to them about it and got advice from them on how to really deal with it. But yeah, it was rough.
yeah, I could tell Trevor had a good heart, you know? That,
Yeah.
that really helped me kind of stick with you, I guess. Um, I don't know, Kyle, it's weird for me too, because I was only, I guess, 19, maybe 20, the whole time I knew Kyle. So like I really couldn't take that like objective, like this is what this dude is, you know?
I
Yeah.
think that's what helped me a lot with just believing in a higher power is like just taking it as objective. Like the shit my mom does or shit my dad does, it's never gonna be to harm me, but I know they're here on the earth the same time I am. They love me to death. They're trying to do what's best for me, and they're doing it the only way, not the only way, but the best way they see fit. So
Yeah.
if it's gonna piss me off, that's because it's not the best way I see fit. Like it's just that's something they're doing. Like there's nothing I can't control. I can't do anything about it. They're doing something nice in their mind. It's time for me to sit back and think, oh, maybe why do they think it's nice? Why do I think it's not nice? Shit like that. Like it's gotten me to analyze it a lot more.
Yeah, and it's all how you perceive it too. When you start shifting the perspective on things that happen, with your parents or anybody really, like it can make you realize that that's not necessarily the case, and change it. It'll change you over it.
Yeah, yeah,
So
it's
it
weird.
took me a lot to realize like my dad and the way our relationship has gone is like that's that's him in his life, and I can't hold that against him. Like he's doing what he thinks is best in his life, and yeah, it sucks that those years are gone now, but you know, maybe the
S-
future will hold something different. So,
Is it when you came out that he just didn't want anything to do with you?
no, at first he was real supportive of it. Him and my stepmom, they, called my husband their other son. And then as the religious got to become more of an influence, it started shifting it towards we don't believe this is right anymore, but we're still going to love you. And then it shifted to uh, we aren't we don't really want to have anything to associate with it. So then the
Really?
conversations we'd call and talk to each other, and it would just be like wave tops. I'm not really talking about my life. I'm not really telling you what's really going on because I have to leave that part of my life out.
Such a
And so for
significant
me,
part of your life too, you know?
yeah, and for me it was like, all right, I gotta kind of cut ties and let it lay for a little while, and it's slowly grown back into it, into a good relationship, and I think I'm hopeful for the future on it.
Yeah.
So
Were you in during Don't Ask, Don't Tell?
I was, yeah.
When did that end? Like 2011, I want to say.
No, I think when was it repealed? I'd have to go back and look, but I was in for a couple of years before they reappealed or appealed it. So
But you still kind of, I don't say kept it hidden, but like didn't tell people after that, right? Like I didn't know you were gay for a
no,
while.
I and that's that personal and professional.
Yeah, yeah.
I grew up in that time of don't ask, don't tell one, but also, that's still something that people can have an objective look on, and not that it won't necessarily go in your favor. They won't really look at you as a person and take you in for your work ethic or who you are. Um, they'll just immediately put that as number one and you know
Right.
slide
Yeah,
it off the table. So
they couldn't
I
separate. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I've worked with really religious people in the past, and there's been little issues, but eventually we work it out to a point where we have a good working relationship, and in all reality that's all we need. I don't need to be friends with you on the weekends, but we still have to have a good working relationship, and if that's not there, it can degrade real quick. So
Yeah, when I found out, um, Miguel's the one who told me, right?
mhm.
I was like, that doesn't make it. It was kind of weird, right? Because like you, in my mind, right, I'm thinking like a gay person that's got like all the gay people I knew were from Colorado, very gay, like
Okay.
had a voice and all the like rainbow flags everywhere. I'm like Jason,
Yeah.
bro, what? That's crazy. Like I never would have guessed,
I can't
and
see
then
him wearing a rainbow flag.
never would have guessed in 1,000 years, right?
Yeah.
And then I'm thinking, I wonder if he kept it hidden because of Kyle, because Kyle he would have said some shit to you, bro, if he knew.
No, it wasn't really that. It was because, I mean, Miguel and I were really close friends when I was there, right? We still are. We still talk on occasion, but you know how that is when you have space between you. Sometimes
Yeah,
things
yeah.
don't stay as connected. But he was the first person I ever told. So he knew well before anybody else did. And then I didn't like really not give a shit until I got to where I'm at now and got settled, sort of, I'll say, because I had to kind of interview for this job now. And, I didn't want to disclose that initially because I felt like maybe they would have taken that into their decision. So,
Yeah, Trevor.
I was gonna say that's kind of interesting. Miguel is the first one to know. Miguel was like my dude when everything hit the fan. Like I slept at his house for a couple days when she was sleeping at my house. I had nowhere to stay, so it's kind of
Yeah.
funny that Miguel was there for the both
Shout
of
out
us.
to Miguel, bro.
Yeah.
That a solid dude, bro.
Yeah, just
Like,
trying to do good in the world. That's a good dude. Yeah.
yeah,
Well, and
no, that's
him and I were always, I don't know, real close, because he was already in E4 and he was way older than us, right? But he was also, I don't know, a little immature, I guess, in a sense. And so,
yeah,
like, we related a little bit in that sense. And so we grew close. And he was going through a tough time about the same time all that stuff was changing in my life. And, so I just kind of told him one day we were going to get coffee, and it was the same reaction you just had, like, what? What are you talking about?
Yeah.
yo, like I was shook, dude.
Is that like so? That's the biggest thing for gay individuals is the coming out. Was that like scary in the car, or did you just say it? You know what I'm saying? Like, did you look Miguel? You know where
Uh,
that probably played over in your head quite a bit.
I think I had already, yeah. I mean, because there were instances beforehand that I like wanted to say something, but we had just never had that whole like sharing of things in our life that were that monumental. You know what I mean? He was going through a pretty rough time, and it just seemed like, okay, this is the right time because he just told me something, and I'm going to tell him something, and at that point, we have to keep it secret. Like it's
Yeah.
Yeah, you're locked in, bro.
yeah, and so it was kind of it was like what soldered our friendship together in a sense. And I've had, the next person was Drew, tech supply guy. Him and I had a couple real rough deployments together, and that just kind of, it was easy for me to do because I'd already had that relationship with him. Now, when I came out to my family initially, that was a little different because that's your family, and
Yeah.
their perspective on it can be hard to deal with, you know. So,
Well, yeah, no, I remember when my sister was telling me how her spouse was transitioning to become a man, right? Like initially, I was like, that's kind of like bizarre, you know? Like that was
yeah,
the first trans person I ever knew, and
yeah,
like of course I was afraid of like dead naming them, and him getting all pissed off at me. But like he was super chill about it, like we talked about it, like I talked to my sister about it, and it was like surprisingly simple. I was shook though, bro, when he started taking testosterone one year. Like I came home for Christmas and he opens the door and he's like, "Sup, bro?" And he's got like a beard and all this shit. I'm like, "What
totally
the
changed. Yeah,
yeah,
Yeah.
what the yeah." She texted me like a few months ago though, like thanking me because she knows I'm a religious guy, I'm fairly
yeah,
right wing on some things, but my guiding principle, I guess, is just not to be a dick when you don't need to be.
yeah.
Well,
Um, I mean, you don't have to be that way. Like you're not in that situation, and at the end of the day, they're a human being, so why would you not be nice to them? I mean, I don't get necessarily like all bent out of shape with a lot of it. I've grown up in the special operations community, and we're inherently known for harassing each other to no end about everything.
Literally.
So there's going to be jokes. There's going to be stuff that people say, and you just got to kind of let it roll off your back, and you got to be accepting of their views just as much as they're being accepting of yours. So
yeah, that was like my biggest thing is when I started having my mental health issues. I was like, I wouldn't want someone to downplay my shit. Like
hmm
when I come and tell you about my thing and or my suicide attempt, whatever it is, and you just downplay it, that's just like the ultimate betrayal. So I don't want someone to come to me, open up to me, and then me seem like they think I'm a dick for whatever my reaction was. And I was
yeah,
thinking about this earlier because I asked Kevin a couple times if we could talk about this with you because I've never met you before. I didn't know what was happening. But then earlier today I was thinking why wouldn't he want to talk about it too? Because there's only one way for me to find out because I don't think that way. I don't that's not how my brain is wired. So the only way for me to really know what you're going through is if you tell me. And
Yeah.
now we're in a society where you can't even tell me anymore because there's so many bullies or whatever it is. Both on both
Yep.
ends of the spectrum. It's just there's no discourse anymore. I can't ask questions. I just want to know. I want to know what's
Yeah.
going on because this is such a big thing in today's society. If I don't know what's going on, I'm just left in the dust, and I'm just one of those ignorant people that no one can come and talk to about it.
Exactly. And as advocates for anything, you have to be willing to have those conversations, even with people that you disagree with. You know, when my dad, fell into the religion and that started my lifestyle started becoming an issue, that was where I was at with it, but he wasn't. He wasn't willing to like teach me what he believed. And so it just kind of like shut the conversation down. It didn't bring any prosperity.
It was like
It
a
just kind of
bad
fell
faith.
short.
Yeah, it was like a bad faith like he wasn't genuinely trying to understand you. I mean, at least it didn't sound like.
No, he wasn't. And that's going to shut anything down. Like, no, I'm not going to want to talk to you about it anymore. So you have to be open minded to those things. Like, I'm not trans. I don't necessarily really understand it because I've never lived it. I've never put myself in your shoes or been in your shoes. And I can try, but unless I have that conversation with you, like, I'll never know. And I'll never be able to relate to you, and I'll never be able to put myself in your shoes and actually understand.
That's the biggest problem is the relatability. I mean, my dad always says this: the easiest way to talk to someone is just on one thing y'all relate on. But
Yeah.
and it's becoming a big. I mean, it is a big part of your life, being gay, lesbian, trans, whatever it is. It's such a big part of your life, and if you can't talk about it, you're gonna have to fill this conversation up with something else. And
Yep.
we're gonna have to relate on
And what
something else.
and what do you do at that point? It's because
Nothing.
it's going to be weird for both of us at that
Right.
point in the conversation. Like, we're both going to kind of shut down, and then you're never going to find that common ground.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's just people labeling other people as like the others,
Yeah.
Yeah.
like straights versus gays or blacks and whites. It's like I don't think we should label other people as like the other group.
Well, it also doesn't define you as a person.
Yeah.
Like, you being straight isn't defining you as a person, and me being gay isn't defining me as a person. And sorry to assume your,
Go for
sexual orientation, but
it.
it it's just one of those things. Like, we have to talk about it. We have to educate each other. We have to be advocates for whatever we believe in, and you have to be approachable about it.
That was one thing I kind of struggled with because, like, in Colorado, people are very gay. Like,
Yeah.
they a lot of them do make it like the kind of the center of their personality. But
Yeah.
like, I didn't meet like a gay dude that wasn't all he would ever talk about until I was like 22, 23.
Well, and that's one of those things too. You talk to different people, and it doesn't matter if it's sexual orientation or their hobby. Like, whatever their life is about, and if that's the only thing they have, that's what they're going to make it. You know, so if that's what they have in their life, and that's the biggest thing in their life, like, they're going to run wild with it. So,
Sure, for sure.
Right.
I don't impress it on people. Like, I don't go into anything impressing my sexual orientation on anybody. I don't hide anything anymore. I don't gloss over it. Like, if somebody asks me if I'm married, like, yeah, I have a husband. Or even if they ask me, oh, what's your wife's name? And I say Jacob, like, we all have a little awkward giggle about it, but I don't make it a big deal. It's because it's not in all reality.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just not a big like. It's just something that you are. It's like no more than
Yeah.
no more than me being straight. Okay.
Yeah.
It's almost like a feeler for if you want to talk to the person. Like, you could almost
Yeah.
you could just run up to a stranger, and if you just tell them that, you could offer their reaction and be like, you know what, I could stop talking to you.
Yep.
And I'll be perfectly
yeah.
fine.
Like, okay,
You immediately know whether the conversation's going to go anywhere or not.
Yeah,
It's like, because you can see it in their face. They'll like immediately shut down or
Yeah.
get this like wide-eyed look on their face, like, oh man. And it's like, and once I smile and like kind of laugh about it, then you see unless they're not okay with it, but like,
Yeah.
the ones that say something awkward, they once you laugh and smile about it, it kind of brings the wall down, and then it almost kind of, I don't know, offers you more to talk about a little bit because you just both laughed at something funny
Yeah,
that you just said, you know,
that's
like
or that's not like I said, not something I know about. Like, of course, I'm gonna
yeah,
laugh my ass off at that because if you're making a joke about it, I can't make jokes about it. I can't because I don't know, and that's what I do every day.
yeah,
Is I just fuck around, make jokes about it. Of
yeah.
course, I'm gonna love that shit because I can't make the jokes.
I mean, I laugh at some of the worst gay jokes, you know, like they're funny to me too.
Yeah.
It's not a big deal, you know. There's certain lines you don't cross,
Right.
obviously, you know, like for me, like is a trigger word. Like I've had people say that to me in not so great environments under the wrong terms, and it's, you know, I'll say something to you at that point, you know. But if you use it in a joke, like it's not the same. It doesn't hold the same context, you know.
Right.
Yeah, that's a lot of these kind of triggering words. Like depends on how you're going about it.
Yeah, and we shouldn't hold so much to it. Like in all reality, at the end of the day, it's just a word. You know, it's the thought and the influence and the meaning that you put behind it that really makes it what it is. You know.
Right.
Yeah, no doubt. Where are we at on time, Troy?
We're at 116.
Ooh,
116. Yeah.
Sounds nice, bro. Yeah.
Yeah. You ready to wrap it up?
Hell yeah, bro. Because I really got to go to the bathroom. Well, yeah,
you too,
no,
huh?
Jason. Yeah, I appreciate you coming on, man. It's definitely a great
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah. No, y'all definitely have to come on again, man. That was awesome. I appreciate it a lot.
Well, I'm currently we're getting everything started for a PCS to Hawaii in October. So
Oh yeah.
Hell yeah.
hopefully we can get a video in before then because I'd love to talk to you guys about anything you want to.
Yeah.
Enjoyed it, but maybe the next time I'm on here, it'll be with the ocean in the background.
Fingers
Nice
crossed.
backdrop.
Hey.
Yeah.
For sure. No, yeah, we definitely got to get you on again, man. Appreciate you
Yeah.
coming
All
on.
right.
No shit, man.
Yeah.
All
Later,
righty.
dudes.
Later.
Peace.